Hello guys, now we are on the model game for the Sicilian Scheveningen variation, and it is the Tal variation with the F4 move, and this is the model game for white. So let's see how white should attack the Scheveningen Sicilian by the Tal variation. So the game is played between Michael Thal as white and Mark as black in 1988, and the game goes e4 c5 knight f3 e6 d4 cd4 knight d4 knight f6 knight c3 d6, and now f4, and this move is the Thal variation, and knight c6 bishop e3 bishop e7 queen f3 castle shot and long castles. And as you can see, before castling, even instead of castling, e5 can be played as shown by the engine, and after long castles by white, now that black's queen on d8 is being opposed along the f file by a white rook, uh, by a, I mean by on the d file it is being opposed by the rook, and it has to be careful. And a6, this push is somewhat careless. He could have instead played queen c7. This would manage to get the queen off the d file, but this square is not so attractive. White has a variety of attacking possibilities, and here the most correct reaction would be instead of a6 to take on d4, if at all taking on, and sorry, d4 not e4, sorry, taking on d4, and after bishop takes d4 and queen to a5, so that black can continue with now e5. So after long castles, black played a6, and now white played g4. This is the tried and tested approach, but here Thal could have even struck immediately. The most natural move is here e5, and indeed it confers a significant advantage upon white, and here after knight takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, d takes e5, and after f takes e5, now knight to d5, now knight to e4. This position carries a lot of immediate danger for black. Here, if at all, here actually black is advised to play knight to d5. If it is taken, then e takes d5. Now if queen takes, now knight takes d4, e takes d6, queen takes d4, and here the game may go like this. If at all this bishop takes, then d takes e5 can be played or even bishop to g4 can be played. Rook to d2, and then d takes c5, bishop takes c5. The game goes like this. So here, even after this, knight takes c6 can be played. If at all knight e8, and knight takes c6, b takes c6, and queen takes c6, this is extremely favorable for for white. I mean, it is favorable for white. So the move which is set by engine after e5, best move is knight to d5. So then, but in the game after a6, g4 is played by Tal, and now queen c7, and it would have been better to exchange the knights on d4. So then after g5, now knight to d7. This is the kind of moment that Tal was waiting for, and he wasn't the only one. So there is also another famous player called Velimirovich. His famous Velimirovich attack has often made use of the opportunity presented here. Now knight to f5, and the engine shows it's a mistake. After he takes f5, he takes f5. Now this is one of a stereotypical sacrifice. Now queen to a5, queen to a5, and now f6, gf6, and now knight to d5, queen takes, and queen here, queen to e4, knight c5, bishop takes c5, f5, knight takes e7, check, or even better is queen takes e7, then knight takes e7, then knight takes e7, check, king h8, and now there is this check, there is f6, gf6, and then rook f7, bishop to g2, I think white has a very strong attack here, even if he doesn't have a queen. After queen a1, king d2, queen a2, rook g3, and queen to a4, and again there's a check, king d2, queen here, and I think the position would be repeated on this. Anyways, there is queen takes f4, check is coming, so it is dangerous. We cannot allow this, white cannot allow this. So all this happens because of the accepted sacrifice on f5. If black accept the sacrifice, all this would come. So here actually black didn't accept the sacrifice in the game. He went for b5. uh, so let's see. f6 gf6 gf6, and here even rook g1 is coming. And if black tries to keep the lines closed with f5, then queen h5 is coming, and white has a wide range of attacking ideas such as bringing the g1 rook to g3 and h3, or putting the f1 bishop on c4, or he can even bring the knight to d5 and then to f6. So but black, here the engine says that the sacrifice must be accepted. uh, so then now knight to d5, another sacrifice. uh, so here even bishop g2 is correct here. So if at all this sacrifice is accepted, the engine says to accept the sacrifice, he takes d5, he takes d5. Now rook to e8 is played, but actually it's the engine shows it as a blunder. Black should have gone knight to c5, and if at all this and this, then bishop takes f5 is coming. So there is this bishop knight h6 check, and then if at all the king, could the king move? If the king moves to h8, then d takes c6, then g takes, he could take it, and then g takes h6. Now rook g1 is the threat, and rook h8, d takes c6, and bishop to f5, and bishop d4 check, and f6. Now bishop to h3, bishop takes h3, and queen takes h3, and queen takes c6, and rook he1. Now rook a e8, b4, and then knight to d7. So this is how the game would go. Knight to b8, or even knight to d5. My god. So what if f takes, then f takes e5. So what is the idea here? Rook g7, queen e4 and bishop c3. Now rook and then rook here, then queen h1, rook d1, queen e4. Okay, I think the position will be repeated. So this is how the game would have gone. But in the game after e takes d5, e takes d5. In the game, the black player played rook e8. So after this, now d takes e6, knight to c5, knight takes g7 was played by Tal. Now black's position is shattered, and now king takes f5, bishop takes f5. So now after queen takes f5, knight to e6, bishop to d3, and now rook h8, rook df1, and then rook a f8. Now immediately g6 can be forced, but Tal played rook hg1, bishop to d8, g6, hg6, rook takes g6, fg6, and queen takes g6 mate. So this is a model game for white, guys. I hope you would have enjoyed the game. I wanted to show you the variations and the sacrifices by white. So I hope you would have learnt from this game. I'll be meeting you in the next game. There is one more game for white, and I have next two games for black. Totally 4 games. So thank you all. I'll meet you in the next game.